General Mahamatra of the Academia. It's my duty to uphold. What the fuck is this email I got? Oh, it's a Genshin Impact. It's an anime game. I don't know if it's like anime specific, but it's anime styled game. All right. Well, that makes a lot more sense.
Genshin Impact. I remember that game. Speaking of Breath of the
I didn't
Wild,
get into it. I tried.
I did too. I feel like it almost had me for the first like 5 or 6 hours, and then I just couldn't keep going. You have to, which I'm surprised you didn't, because it's a waifu simulator game. That's basically all it is.
I think because I like a storyline along with my waifus. Just to have a waifu, it doesn't mean anything. What's her personality like? How does she get along with the rest of the harem? These are questions I need
think
to
you'll
answer.
piss off a lot of people, man. I think there's very deep Genshin lore. I don't know.
I'm sure. I'm pretty sure there's an actual anime around it that I just haven't watched. It do be like that.
All right, so we're in the movie portion of our podcast here. It's funny because I remember like 2 episodes to you, I suggested the idea that our intros before the movie sections be a little shorter, because I'm like, well, we just get straight into talking about the movie. And then we talked about Baldur's Gate for an hour. So maybe this will be 2 separate episodes. I don't know.
All right, let's get into it. Sorry to bother you.
Yes, last week
the movie.
you suggested this movie, Mitchell.
I did. Let me introduce you to the director and writer. It's Boots Riley. This movie was actually, I believe he was working on this in terms of writing it back in 2012. He did a book. He is also a talented music artist as well. And I think he's been doing music since like the 90s. So a little bit of a marathon man, if you will.
And Jack of all trades.
Yeah, absolutely.
Master of none. I'm just kidding. This is really good.
Pew pew pew. What did you think of Sorry to Bother You?
I enjoy this a lot. This is a great movie. It has some like tonal issues in my opinion. I think it there's like parts of it that I think want me to take it seriously that I can't, and then there's parts of it that want me to laugh at it that I didn't quite laugh at it, but I laughed a lot in this movie. And there's the vibe of it is very interesting. It's hard to like compare it to any other movie because not to say that it's like, oh my god, it's some tour de force of artistic, like, oh my god, I've never seen a visionary, like, but more in the sense of like the way it uses surrealism is very interesting because it's our reality for the most part, but within the first 20-30 minutes or so, you start seeing these little things that make you realize like, no, this reality is just slightly different. And that's kind of what makes everything going forward like okay. Like no matter how weird the world gets, it's like, okay, well, this is just a different world. Dare I say, a la Southland Tales. It has that kind of like...
Don't you fucking dare. Okay, listen, don't you dare. Somebody did it. I wasn't sure if you were going to say this.
Wait, did
now
they?
I have to because it made me mad. No, somebody said this gave them strong... Oh, shit, what is it? Sunshine on the Spotless Mind.
Oh, Eternal Sunshine?
I got that. Yeah, someone said that it reminded them of that, where it gives you something to start out with, and it slowly incorporates this other element, but it's still set in what is meant to be mostly the real world, just with kind of a few alterations in terms of specific things.
That's true. Okay, yeah, because like, I guess the difference that I think is like, even in that movie, even in the Eternal Sunshine, the only real difference was this fantastical element of the science that could make your brain forget things. Like, but even that isn't too weird. Like, it was explained in a grounded way. This was like, there's just surreal, like, even the idea of there being the TV show where people just get the shit beaten out of them. Like, it's, while, yes, it's like poignant and it is a, like, commentary on where our kind of media has devolved to, of just like, oh, like, just watch people get the shit beaten out of them. Basically the trash television of today. I do get, but it's almost so surreal that you can't believe it. And then once we start getting into the soda girl stuff, where she gets like the corporate deals and does the commercials, and it's like so over the top, but also grounded in a reality that you can wrap your head around, because like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say too much like right out of the gate, but these are also not negatives, I'm saying.
Okay, interesting. All right, so this movie, it starts out with Cassius Green. Cassius Green is a guy who's living in his uncle's basement. He's really trying to make himself in the world. Also, if you think about it, I was watching a video today that kind of said, if you say his name together, Cassius Green, he is only seen as Cash to the company he works for, right?
Yeah.
So it was an interesting kind of play using his name. But he lives in or I think I said basement. He lives in the garage. So he lives in the garage, and he's trying to make ends meet. The movie actually opens up to him being in an interview where he has these accolades. He's got a trophy with him. He's got an employee of the month with him. And the guy kind of calls him out and says, well, I actually worked at that bank you said you worked at, and you didn't fucking work there. And also your friend, he works here, and he's the one you put down as a referral as the boss there. And so there was things he was pulling out. But he's like, this is telemarketing. All you need to do is be able to stick to the script, which is another kind of, I think they do a good job of making commentary that can still just be grounded and feeling like you're watching a movie, because telemarketing, stick to the script. Hearing that doesn't feel as on the nose as do what we tell you as we tell you.
No.
It sounds like something you would expect to hear, when realistically, like, the idea is stick to the script if you want to be successful overall.
Yeah, no, for real. And honestly, I think that is like almost a verbatim thing that some businesses tell you. Because I know you were in technically telemarketing? Because I know you were in phone kind of calls.
Yeah, And this is definitely a reason where I think the movie resonates with me. So I worked for, I could say it now, it's on my LinkedIn, so anybody can go up and look. I worked for Tesla doing solar panel sales. Granted, I've had worse jobs. Now, granted, this was also way before all the crazy.
This is when Elon was
stuff.
cool. Yeah, this is.
Yeah, this was the cool Elon era. But I never at least had to call people, cold call people. Cold calling, for those that don't know, is when you might as well just take the phone book and just call whatever number in it and try to sell people. I was at least calling list of people that showed some kind of interest. We had companies that would try to reach out to people specifically for us, and then our job was to call and qualify their house. We'll see if their houses would qualify. My goal wasn't to qualify someone. I called people whose houses were like 60% shaded and they wanted solar panels, and I'm like, we're not going to put solar panels on your house. There's no benefit. But I had a script. I had things that I was required to say on the call. If somebody gave me kind of I don't know about this, I had to at least make an attempt to show. And one thing I was actually good at was repivoting conversations. But there was also someone whose job it was to listen back to our phone calls to make sure that we were talking about the right things. Yeah, there was an actual job of like quality assurance, QA, where somebody would listen back to our calls to make sure that we were following the conversations the way that they wanted it to.
So weird. But wait. Doesn't that fall into can they only hear your end of it? Because doesn't that fall into a weird thing of like they're allowed to listen to the personal calls?
You start the call with, this is on a recorded line that may be monitored for quality and assurance. So you legally have to start the conversation with that.
And you know what? I feel like I have heard of that, or I have heard that before, like on a phone call. So that makes sense.
Yep. So that is how that worked. But yeah, it absolutely ended up with, I knew that there was people, and sometimes we'd get reports back where it's like, oh, 95% of your call. You would hit everything you needed to talk about. You forgot to mention this on the last call. Like those are all real things.
I'm
And
sorry.
so,
I'm so sorry. I stopped in my tracks because I saw Patton Oswalt pop up in the trailer for Sorry to Bother You here, and was
yep.
very confused because he wasn't in the movie. And then I just realized that he was Mr. Blank's voice. I thought that was also David Cross. I thought
David Cross. Okay, I thought it was too. Which as soon as I heard, I was like, oh my god, that's right. He has David Cross's voice. So I love that David Cross made it to back-to-back movie reviews of ours. But the whole time I'm like, is that like David Cross just doing a slightly different voice?
Yeah,
and then
I thought somebody that was the joke. Yeah. That they all just sound like David Cross. Then somebody else in the reviews
was like, they'll just sound like white guys.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
So funny. It's so good.
No, yeah. I loved the white voice thing, which is all they really showed in the trailer. I didn't mean to sidetrack you, by the way. You were saying the telemarketing, like sticking to the script thing.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. So, like, when I saw that, I'm like, this is very real. And the other part, so we'll kind of catch back up to, he gets offered the job. He goes back home. His uncle's like, you're 4 months behind on payment. And he makes a really funny comment and you don't know it's his uncle at this point. You think he might just be a landlord. And he goes to like this art holier than thou, more righteous. And he goes, you and your family are taking and profiting off. And he's like, you're my nephew.
He's like, my
family. What are you talking about? I gave you that car. It's Terry Crews, by the way. Love Terry Crews.
Great choice.
Yeah. And he's like the default uncle, like absolutely. And so he drives back to work the next day. And one of the things that I love that they did was when he makes his first call, he gets like figuratively, he's not actually, but in the scene you see him being dropped into the kitchen dining room where they're eating breakfast.
Yeah, as if he's physically there. Like, yeah.
When you make a call to someone and you're in that kind of role, it absolutely feels like that. Because oftentimes you're calling people kind of out of the blue. They could be doing anything. And I've heard of plenty of things going on. That was also... I really felt that in terms of understanding what it's like to make those calls and feeling a little bit like you're invading somebody's personal space. Mm-hmm. And I also very much, obviously the white voice, as they say, which is meant to be a successful voice, a carefree voice. Like, you don't need their money. You're doing this for their benefit. You're not worried. Hi, my name is Mitchell. How are you doing today? I have a voice that I use for phone calls for work.
Yeah.
And it's real. Like, that's an actual thing.
No, yeah. And I would say it's because Langston, Danny Glover, which he had to make a Lethal Weapon reference. I don't know if you noticed, but when they're in the bar, he says, I'm too old for that shit. And that's like his catchphrase in Lethal Weapon. But he outright says, it's not even really a white voice. It's just more of like successful. So I think it's funny that I almost feel like they said white voice for the trailer to like get people in as the joke to what, because that's not really what this movie's about. Like, yes, he uses that white voice and successful voice a lot throughout the movie. It's not the focal point of the movie necessarily. So I feel like that was the joke, but then very quickly, Danny Glover's character goes, not really a white voice. It's just more of like, these people want to hear someone that they want to be. And what I love about this movie, I don't know if you'll agree with me, but it feels like the opposite of Wolf of Wall Street. It's like the anti-Wolf of Wall Street movie.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like almost trying to reach the same goals, but going completely opposite directions of like going about it. It's very interesting.
Because they do the same kind of thing, but they realize the way that those paths take them is something, it means very different things to them.
Yeah, because I would say sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna add on that. I think too, when you see that trailer and you hear the white voice, you're like, oh, okay, so it's gonna be like, are they talking about like um, race relations, way farther on the capitalism side, if anything, than it is
No.
about race, I'd say.
Exactly. It's not even really about racial imbalances at all in this movie.
He,
Like it's speckled in there because in the same way that it's speckled into reality, like that it's everywhere in our reality. So yes, it's in this movie, but it's not what this movie's about by any means.
no, and I love when he says, I'm not talking about a Will Smith voice, all right? That's just proper. I'm talking about sounding like you're gonna hop in your car, you ain't got a care in the world, you don't
got a
even need to be on
Lamborghini
this
sitting
phone
outside. Yeah, no, like I love the way they set up that interaction between those two. And it's funny you bring up his name, the Cassius Green thing, because I didn't look into all their names, but oh, you know what? Salvador doesn't have an E in it, so that ruins my theory now that I'm looking at it. But I thought all of their names kind of had to do something with their role in the movie. Similar to how like The World's End had that kind of motif. Because like you said, Cassius Green. He literally says in the movie, he's like, is Cash green, baby? Like that when he asks,
Oh, yeah.
that's when I put the two and two. I was like, oh, Cassius Green. That's when it hit me. But his friend Salvador is the one that he put on his resume as the previous boss. I thought his name was like an anagram for almost slaved, but with an extra O. Because I thought Salvador had an E in it. So I was like, oh, Salved. I was like, oh, okay. Salvador slaved. And then you had Squeeze, which is the guy who comes in and he's almost squeezing him out of his life. Or you could call him the main squeeze of the girl who comes in. Like it's almost like their names have literal meanings to them. And so but that doesn't really go anywhere once you start looking into more of their names. So I was like, whatever. But it's an interesting thing. It for sure the main character. So
yeah.
But yeah, so he does have his girlfriend, whose name Detroit, which that was hilarious. That's a great line in this movie. Is your name is Detroit? Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, my parents wanted me to have an American name.
It was so funny. There's so many great like short comedy bits, and I think anytime you can get a really funny moment out of like when he goes 40 on 2 and it's 40 cents.
Oh, I wrote the biggest unrealistic thing in this movie is that 40 cents got him that far in this town. Like he drove for so long after that. But dude, that shit was so funny. Like the 40 cents thing was great. Yeah,
My parents wanted me to have an American name. That one was funnier the second time I watched it because like I was paying a lot more attention. The first time I was trying to just take the whole movie in when I had first seen it. And man, so good the second time.
And also I love that character because, she fully embraces the art motif. And that's where I started to notice that the world was weird, like surreal in a sense, because it's when she had the sign spinning job and the sign just said the word off. And like I was just like, what is she?
I don't even remember that. I realized I
really?
remember the sign spinning. I don't think I actually read the sign.
The first sign that she spins, it just says the word off with an exclamation point, and she's like spinning, and I'm like, what are they even selling? I don't know. But then later, Squeeze, when they're all at the bar, he says something like, oh yeah, we're all just being like pushed to be like workhorses, which, wink wink. But he's like, we all just need to kind of like realize that we're worth more. He's like, hey, because like let's say we're spinning a sign out on the side of the road, who says that next week they don't want you to spin a bigger sign with a bigger name on it for the same amount of money? And she goes, hey, no, I've got the best sign and the best corner. I've got the most important word in that phrase. And for a second I thought that was going to feed into more, and maybe there's something I missed or something, but I was just like, wait, what is off? What was, so I don't know. I think that's just something that the movie is just, it's a joke that they're making, but yeah, I thought that was funny.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So any notes so far that you had, your initial thoughts and then, from its opening?
So I didn't take a lot of notes in this movie because I just mostly enjoyed it. which is
I didn't either. I realized this is the movie I took the
yeah.
least amount of notes. And
Oh,
I tried to start out.
oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I would say I tried to start out, but again, like my notes like went up to like like halfway through. My notes are I forgot it was David Cross's voice. And I mentioned after that how I had actually experienced that kind of level of excitement. So when he gets kind of that white voice down and he starts making sales, there's him and his manager are like, what? High five, and that's real. When I worked at Tesla, each team kind of had their own little different things. So each team had like a pod of about 5 or 6 people. We had an actual gong, and if you got your sale,
That's work
you
of
could
Wall
hit
Street
the
shit.
gong.
Yeah, I think that's literally
Bro.
in Work of Wall Street. Wolf
Yeah,
of Wall Street.
actually,
Sorry.
that might be what they do. Yeah, so that's all real life. And again,
Wow.
when you think of salespeople, you want something that it's I got it. I did it. Here's an announcement of like my accomplishment.
Endorphins. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I think it captured what it's like to be in that environment. And while working with Squeeze was kind of this guy where he's like, we deserve better than this because they're all working only for commission. And Cash is like, yeah, of course, I'm definitely on board. I'm here for the team. But as he starts getting more and more successful, it becomes that my family, they have bills they need to pay. I need to pay those bills.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, I have to work.
Yeah. I think that it is really good at portraying that conflict, because that conflict isn't really shown much in movies, where it's like people actually having to stick to their like
Script.
morals. Let's say, yeah, stick to their script, or in this case, stick to their morals. It's like, because that's almost the kind of like dichotomy. It's like, okay, are you gonna stick to the script, or are you gonna stand for the small guy and like do the right thing? Because it's very like even right now with it's very prophetic in a way, because you have like the Writers Guild and the stuff that like those just ended recently. But you had the strikes amongst the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild and all that stuff. And I can imagine it's very difficult to stop acting and stop writing, especially if you have people emailing you and being like, hey, like, listen, we really want to get this done. Like, imagine like Disney emailing you and you're an unknown actor but it's during this time of like a writer's strike or an actor strike, and they're just like, hey, we have this new Disney Plus show, and there's other actors don't want to do it right now for a certain reason, but we'd love for you to come on and be a main star. Like, it must be so hard to say no to that and stick to those laurels and morals that I don't agree with Cassius in this movie. Like, I think the arc of it was to learn that he didn't do the right thing, even though the position is difficult to choose. I mean, like you said, he had a family to support. But my only thing with that is that clearly it was a sort of apathy and laziness that got him to this position, to where it's not like he has like kids that it's an uncle that he has to pay back, that he's trying to like get. And of course he wants his uncle to be able to keep the house, and he wants to keep his dad's house and like all that stuff like that's separate. But yeah, like, because I even had one of my few notes I had was during that scene with Terry Crews, and it was how he uses let me see my wording just to make sure I got this right. Trying to use existentialism as an excuse for laziness feels like what he does a lot, where he's like, hey, well, we're all gonna die one day, and you're just using your wealth to hoard all of it. And it's like,
that's right, that was the speech.
Yeah, and it's like you don't have to use those kind of existential feelings of dread to make an excuse for why you're not just gonna do the thing you have to do, like work or make money. Like, yeah, it sucks, but like for now, work in it. And the irony is that Squeeze and those people are doing the thing that's trying to fight what he's so against. He's against the idea of capitalism and like, oh man, we're all just working until we die. But
they're acting on what he was preaching in that beginning.
Exactly. But when he's confronted with it, he would rather take the easier path of less resistance and be like, well, they're offering me a promotion, so I kind of got to take it, you know, because, you know, it's an interesting kind of like conflict for a movie. And I think it does really well at conveying how like it would be a hard choice if you were.
And there is another thing that we haven't spoken about yet that gets introduced that I think also plays. I'll say there's two things that I think play additional roles into him kind of taking on that promotion and kind of selling out on some of his morals. So the first one is in commercials, we see there is a company called Worry Free, and you can pretty much sign your life away and they'll provide you with housing, they'll provide you with meals.
It's just prison. It's just prison.
It's prison.
Literally
it's prison.
It's genius.
It's literally you're signing up for prison. It's slave labor and convincing people that, hey, we're not going to pay you. We're going to take care of you. You don't need to worry about anything. It's worry free. And his uncle mentions, well, I don't have the money to pay. You know, maybe this worry free isn't the worst option. Later on in the movie, he makes a comment to his girlfriend. I was going to say Tess, but I think Tess Thompson is the actual actress. Detroit, that's right. He makes a comment to Detroit, well, where I took that promotion because I wanted to be more interesting to you. I feel like that was like a partial truth. I think it was maybe part of it because and maybe, you know, it kind of shows that as he got more things, he was creating a more luxurious lifestyle for them. But I think from the actual actions, I think it was realizing that, you know, he could actually live this life that he had always wanted to by taking that promotion, even though it was, you know, clearly not in maybe the best interest of helping everyone else out. And he was a real Hal Jameson. I loved how they created this like Hal without ever actually talking about who this Hal Jameson guy was. He was just a legend. He was like the Michael Jordan of telemarketing there. And I thought it was just a little funny thing that they kept throwing out. I don't know if that's like a reference to something perhaps.
No, I think it's just supposed to be like a Wolf of Wall Street. He's a who's the guy from Wolf of Wall Street? The main one?
Mike Ditka. No,
sure.
I'm just kidding. That's not.
Sure. But no, yeah, I think like a Mark Cuban, where it's like, oh man, the guy that everyone talks about, that guy who in this company who blew up and became this thing.
Who did the thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's hilarious. And there's a few jokes like that in this movie. There's one even more minute one that I wrote down because it was so fucking funny, but it's when they're in the club and his friend Salvador goes like, oh man, that's that guy from that show. And he goes, oh, cool. I fucking hate that show. Where do you think he's going? Like, it's just such a natural, like, reaction where it's like, oh, yeah, like, if you see someone famous, sometimes you're like, oh, yeah, cool. I fucking hate that show. But, all right, what's he doing anyway? And it's the scene where he goes back and, like, can't handle this, which is hilarious. Where he goes back and there's just people, like, dancing in his face and talking over him. And he just, like, fuck, and then leaves. And that was it.
Yep.
That's the part of the movies that I can understand where I think people watching this might not like that part or those parts because they're so like, they're almost like a comedy sketch. Like they're surreal because it's like he's sitting in this club. He's like, oh, what's that back room? And it's like, oh, well, that's where the special people go. And he's like, oh, well, all right, I'm gonna get in there. So he goes in and then it's a 15-second montage of him like fumbling over himself and then he screams fuck and then comes out and then that's over. They don't come back to that. That back room is never used as like a follow-up for anything. It's just like a joke. But also it's still kind of like shows his character. For me, it built his character of being a person who doesn't belong in that lifestyle, like, which I relate to,
but wants it.
You know, yeah, like I get that. Where it's like, man, I would love to go to these clubs and like drink and be dancing with girls on tables and shit. Like, oh, that sounds fun. Like when I was 21 and shit, that sounds great. But when I was in it, I was like, this oh, stop, like, oh God, what's happening? Like, yeah.
Mhm.
So I thought that was funny.
Yeah, no, I think the movie does a really good job of using those kind of small moments to give characters more of an identity, more of an understanding of what are the things that they're interested in, even if, again, it doesn't even end up working out in their favor the way they wanted it to, anyways.
Yeah. And all right, so we'll kind of move along the story here. So there's this
Okay.
idea of power callers that's initiated from the beginning, which I was laughing right away because I I love it when companies always make like this fake, but like how do I put it? They always create a title that you are like pining after. They give you this thing that you think you need to reach, but it's just some made up goal that gets paid like just as much as anyone else. And it's like, even though in this movie it's slightly different, it's still just so funny how like I was like, oh man, I know that feeling where they try to like, hey, well maybe one day you'll do this, and he even goes like, the fuck is a power caller? Like, what do you mean? He's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, they're the guys up there who make the real money. And that's where I was getting the Wolf of Wall Street vibe a little bit. But anyway, he gets that opportunity to go up to be a power caller the day that they start the strike. So Squeeze and Salvador, and weirdly enough, Detroit just starts working there like a week. But
Yeah.
I'm assuming she only started working there so that she could be part of the um
That's very in
strike.
character for her.
Exactly. Like she seemed very like anti-establishment, and like I liked though that she still loved Cassius to the point where it felt real to like, yes, she has her own morals and has her own standings, but like if she can kind of bend them a little bit to make him happy, and she'll do that. Like she was willing to quit the job and pull away from the strike because she realized like, okay, this is weird. It's not making anyone happy. And I don't have a, because for a second, when she said that in the movie, she was like, oh, well, I quit that job because it was getting weird. I was kind of like, oh, you lame. You just pulled out because it was awkward. But then I realized she didn't even work there beforehand. Like she
Yeah,
had
it
no
wasn't like she had an
stakes.
established career there. Yeah, exactly. So it was one of those. I think they did a good job of each person's character and choices feeling like they were really in line with their character. I also thought it was really funny in the initial meeting where they were trying to hype up the team, and the first manager is speaking, and he's like, "You need to bag and tag. You need to know when to bag them."
Yeah.
And drop him like a body bag in the morgue, or tag him like a body bag and the manager, who was initially the guy doing the interview, who you're like, oh, this is a weird guy, he's like, I think this is getting a little bit out of hand,
Yeah.
and I don't think this metaphor is landing. And then the next girl is speaking, and he's like, all right, this is not like, even
Diana
he's like,
debauchery. Yeah. Well, her name was, what did she say it was? Debauchery. And then Salvador's like, that looks like debauchery. She's like, nope, it's not. Anyway, so she was hilarious. I loved her character. Cause she's like the perfect like corporate figurehead. You know, like the woman who comes down and goes, okay, guys, our numbers have been a little bit down, but we're here to tell you that that's okay, and we need to get like it's like
we're getting paid
so
more.
perfect.
We're not focused on money. Social capital is the big thing. That is what's like, I've heard those people speak before.
Exactly.
And
And it's like, and
hilarious.
don't ask me, ask the news, ask media. That's who's
Oh
telling
my
you this,
gosh,
okay?
yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, all right. No, it's also, by the way, I didn't even realize that the guy's name was Mr. Blank this whole time. That every time they said his name, it would bleep out, or is it
Yeah.
the guy who works for the
At
power
first I was like,
callers.
did I get a censored version of this movie? And then like looking up afterwards, like the people's the characters, it's actually literally just Mr. Blank.
Yeah,
And
it doesn't
again,
say anything.
I don't know if that's meant to say that could be anybody. Is anybody has the chance to be willing to sell out? Or if
But
they're just like, it'd be really funny if there's a character who just doesn't have a name.
I kind of took it as that he's almost in this purgatory of not being a horseman worker, but also not being like an elite man, like
He does eat a lot of apples, though. He almost always has an apple, if you notice.
Exactly. So it's like he's almost in this middle state, so he's nothing. You know, he just doesn't even exist. He's just blank. You know, like he's not quite a human. He's not quite a horse worker. He's not quite an elite.
Which we'll get into that.
Yeah, which that might be a random thing it feels like I'm bringing up, but that's what I was trying to get
As someone
to.
who hasn't seen this movie that's watching this is like, what?
So
but continue.
So, that's one thing I will say against this movie is that I think it could be a little bit shorter. Just a little bit. I think that the first like hour and 20 minutes before the reveal of like the what the fuck is going on here takes a little bit too long. It doesn't make it bad enough to really knock it down too many points or anything like that, but I did at some point check how much time I had left in the movie, and there was still like an hour and 10 minutes left, and this was still like 20-30 minutes before like the reveal. And once that reveal happens, I'm in for the next 40 minutes. Like I'm so like, but that kind of, yeah, that beginning, like it started to lose me a little bit. But either way, he gets invited to this party with Stephen Lift, is the kind of owner of, what's it called again? Freeway?
Worry free.
Worry free.
And
Thank
Mr.
you.
Blank's voice is Patton Oswalt.
Yes. Mr. Blank's voice Patton Oswalt, and Cash's white voice is David Cross. And so Stephen Lift invites him to this party, and it's played by Armie Hammer, who at this time did not have the kind of I don't know, reputation that he has now. Do you know anything? You don't know something? Do you not know anything about Armie Hammer?
I was trying to figure out, I'm like, is that his actual name? That can't be his like actual name.
It is. He played the twins in The Social Network. It's just one guy, but he played the twins in The Social Network. He's been accused of being a weird sex freak and cannibal, but all of the women he ate consented. So, you know, there's a weird kind of moral question we have at the end of the day. But
he played that role real fucking well. That's all I'll say, is because that is the kind of character he definitely plays in this movie.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say, if there's any guy that would eat me, he could. But so anyway, so in this movie, he gets invited to this party, and at first he's kind of hyped up to be like the big star of the show. Like, oh man, he's making all these calls down at the new power call center, which we didn't mention. His new job, being a power caller, is essentially selling slave labor. These people at the worry-free facilities are workers that they're selling to other companies as free labor, essentially, or like labor at half the cost. And he immediately sees how much he's being paid, and he's like, well, I'm gonna need more suits. He doesn't even question it. He's just like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, because he acts like he's initially against it, and until they literally show him how much he'll make, and then immediately goes into I'm gonna need some more suits.
Yeah, which shows that he's not really morally centered yet. He still can be swayed by money. But to be fair, I think the movie is also trying to show that the people in his life were also kind of telling him to do that. So it's like, it's hard to be a part of a society that tells you like, hey, do the morally right thing, but also make enough money to supply for your family and friend and like people in your life and support yourself. And sometimes you're confronted with those options that conflict. It's like, oh, well, if I want the job that's going to make enough money to do this thing, I will not have enough time for my family or whatever, friends or whatever it might be, or vice. Like, it does show that feeling of like all the people in his life were telling him, hey, make money, do better, get a better job. And that's what he did. The problem is that it just wasn't morally good. It was
bad.
It was bad, but at the same time, it's what people in his life were telling him to do. So it's like
society tells you to do.
Exactly. So it's like, how do you argue with that?
I also liked how the photograph of, I think, his father, as he progresses through the movie and makes more and more choices, kind of giving into this, the photo goes from looking like he's like smiling to, I think at one point he's like actually has his thumb down
and he has his head in his hands and he's like
yeah, it just changes to show like the photo is not happy with his current choices.
Yeah, it's like his own, and it could be taken as two ways, right? It could be his literal dad looking down on him, judging him, or it can be his own like moral compass, right? It's like he knows what he's doing in this moment is bad, and it's being portrayed through his dad being like, dude, this isn't right, but he still does it anyway, you know, which we've all been there. So he goes to this party and he's kind of used as like an entertainment source at one point, which is hilarious. Yep. And this is the one part where they do kind of touch on the racial stigma, but at the same time, it can also just be taken as like, hey, you were brought as entertainment. Once you learn the twist, it's like, oh, well, you're not really an elite. You're not part of this. You're a worker, you know? But yeah, he's brought in and they're like, well, you can do something, right? You got something you could bring to the table. He's like, no, not really. I don't got interesting stories. He's like, well, you can rap, right? I could bet you can rap. Rap. And there's just a bunch of white people surrounding him yelling rap over and over. You must relate to this.
Actually, I did, because I have been at parties where people are like, oh, you rap for us. Do a rap right now. And luckily, I'm the personality where I'm very outgoing, and
you
I
actually rap
to show that skill
too.
Yeah. And I also actually rap, so that makes that, you know, easier. But I understand that pressure of people having like, oh, you do this thing, do it for me right now. I want to see you do it. And it's happened to me sometimes at work, and not as I'll say as much at this job, because this job I've actually done it but have felt comfortable. But I've been at places before where they're like, you should rap for us right now, and I'm like, I'm in a meeting and I'm dressed very professionally, and I need to like put some mental filters on before I do this, because freestyling is not like, oh man, and I could talk forever about freestyling, but like when I freestyle, if I say I'm going to do a freestyle, I'm typically doing that off the dome. Like I will say, I'm like, oh, this is a verse I've already got done that I just want to show you. But if I'm going to freestyle, I'm going to actually freestyle.
Yeah.
And I, again, if it's off the dome, I'm not sitting there thinking, oh, is this something that I could actually shoot? Is this something I could actually say out into an office if I make this metaphor? How are they going to take that? Because I'm literally just trying to do art right now. So I can understand like different levels of, you guys are making the same face.
We are one.
He looks so amused.
Yeah, he's having a good time. You want to say something? Okay, no. Anyway.
He says me, yeah. And even like right before that, again, kind of going into the stigma of what you look like, I think he's talking about he's going hunting and he shot a rhino by shooting it in the head a bunch of times. And so he goes, oh, you're from Oakland. You probably popped a cap in somebody's ass, and tell me about, you know, that, I don't know if he says hood life, but he kind of makes like that reference of what it was like. And he's like, that wasn't me.
Yeah, he's like, no, that, which, you know, I thought, Link, I thought he was about to pull my headphones off my head. I thought there was going to be a little more that they were going to allude to that, because early on in the movie, there's a moment where Squeeze is in the car for the first time, and Salvador and Detroit, they're all driving somewhere. And Detroit says like, yeah, well, when he was back in high school, he used to, and then the car like stops and he interrupts her and he's like, why do you always got to bring up high school? You know? And then later when Steve Lift, Army Hammer, when he's like, hey, there must be something from your past you've done, right? You've got secrets. And he's like, No, I don't really have it. I thought there was gonna be something more where like he killed someone in high school, or you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, you know what?
it didn't need that, but um,
Yeah, and I wonder if maybe that's something that the book actually like goes into deeper detail on, because the there was they Boots Riley did write this actually as a book first. But yeah, I do actually remember that and wondering, I'm like, oh, I don't remember that from watching the first time, but I wonder if there was more of an emphasis to say, maybe there was something from his past there. I also wanted to touch on, just because we've kind of gotten to the point where when he's going to work, he's crossing the picket line, and all of his friends are picketing, and they're saying, hey, if you turn on them, we actually might have a real shot, because you're a big influence at the company now. And he's like, no, I'm gonna stick with it.
yeah.
And so going back to, the girl throws a soda can at his head and says, have a cola, bitch.
That becomes like a big
that was
thing
a
in the
reference.
movie. Yeah.
I think that was a reference to, I don't know if it was Kylie Jenner or one of the Kardashians, but it was a commercial with the Pepsi to the police officers during
Bro, that happened in 2020. That happened 2 years after this movie, I think. Isn't that crazy?
That was after, because I thought was
Hold on.
Oh man.
Because
okay, double check that, because you're right.
You're right. 2017, which is the year before this movie came out. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of the influence behind that. But he mentions a line that Cassius says. I don't remember the first part of it, but Boots Riley actually says in an interview, and it's a line Cassius says about we need to wake up and make America great again. And he's like,
oh, I didn't even notice that.
I had to take that line out of the movie. So he doesn't say it. Yeah, he makes that mention, and it's one of those where I think he did a great job of making a movie that could have come out at any time. And again, there is that level of surrealism, and you get to a point where you're either going to decide, I'm going to enjoy this movie for what it's created and the world it's created. And I think by kind of creating the worry-free company, the fact that they have commercials, creating the television show, I just got the shit kicked out of me. I think that was also them kind of work to, hey, we're going to bend the rules in this world and existence, but it is going to be set in it's not like a sci-fi aliens kind of movie.
No.
I
it's
think
just weird.
I think in doing so, yeah. It's actually funny because they make the mention in the very beginning. We're not trying to recreate the human human genome here, something like that. Which was a really great.
Which I guess they are. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Which again we haven't even gotten to yet. So, yeah, he's at that party and he eventually gets brought up to Lift's private room which is down this long hallway of all these green doors, which is hilarious. That comes up later. But
yeah, we'll get to that.
So he comes in and immediately Army Hammer Steve Lift has him take this enormous line of coke, which, by the way,
I was about to say,
the line of coke that he took earlier in the movie, at the beginning of the party, which was hilarious because he takes this line of coke and then goes, so you're probably wondering why I brought you to this meeting today. That shit was so funny. But the size of this thing,
it's 2 feet.
I don't even. My thing is is it CGI or something? Because even if it's fake, coke or a fake song, he just snorted a fucking 13-inch long line of something.
Prosthetic nose with the hose of something, maybe. Because
maybe
I actually wrote down specifically. What did I write down? I have never seen coke done in person. But that was a lot.
That's.
There's a half pound of fucking coke in that line.
That's dumb. Unreal.
Have a coke and smile, bitch.
And then even the line that he has Cassius take, especially for someone who hasn't done coke this whole movie. So I assume.
Oh my god, dude, the spiral was like, that's a pretty. Why is everyone doing so much of this shit?
I'm like getting anxiety. I've never even done it, but like I get this anxiety when I see people do it. I'm like, oh god, like it's no, it's insane. So he has him do this shit, and then he sits him down and goes, all right, basically I have this proposition for you. Watch this video. And I love how excited he is about the video. And immediately Cash is like, I have to piss. Can I piss? And he's like, no. He's like, come on, I have to piss. He's like, fine. Go down to the Jade door and go through that.
Jade, specifically Jade.
So he goes down, he goes through a green door that he found. He walks through and he ends up stumbling upon hybrid horsemen who are screaming in pain that they're hurt. And he's freaking out. He stumbles out. He's like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. He runs away. And he runs into...
Huge horse dick.
Yeah, huge horse dicks. And he runs into Steve Lift again. And he's like, what? Why did you go in there? And he's like, I went through the Jade door. He's like, no, that's an olive door. That is very specifically olive. That one is Jade.
Very...
And like, oh, it's just the way he says it. It's like, that one is olive across the hall. He's like, I'm sorry, I didn't know. He's like, I need to get the fuck out. And he's like, no, if you had just watched the video, this would all make way more sense. Just watch the video. So he shows him this video.
Crazy explanation.
And I love it because he's being almost genuine. He's just like, no, it's not that fucking crazy. Please, just watch the video. It's not that crazy. And the video basically explains exactly what he thought it was. He's like, we're creating hybrid human horsemen to work because they'll be stronger and won't complain as much. And he's like, see? It's not.
I just didn't want you to think I was crazy.
Yeah,
I think he actually says.
And he's like, this is exactly what I thought it would be. Let me the fuck out of here. And it's a great moment when you see in the video where he's like, well, the process starts by snorting the catalyst. And then you remember, and he's like, what the fuck did you make me snort? What did you make me snort? And he's like, whoa, bro, it was Peruvian. And he's like, hey, I don't want semantics, okay? There's probably like Peruvian horses and shit, okay?
He's like, you need to be more clear because they probably got horses in Peru and shit. He's like, oh, you're gonna get all semantic on me now. He's like, I just want to know what I snorted. He goes, it was Coke. And then he's like, and honestly, bro, you're really starting to harsh our mellows.
So he's freaking out, but he tells him, he's like, no, just think about it. My proposal is basically like, what does he offer? Oh, to become a horseman for 5 years, for $100 million. And then
the way he wrote the offer down, like it was with crayon, and then the smiley face. Dude, that's the last note I ended up taking. The offer was hysterical.
That was like a Big Lebowski joke. That felt like that was so fucking funny. Like, because in my head, I was thinking how in movies you never see the note. You know what I mean? Because they even do it earlier in the movie. They're like, here's the offer.
Oh, when he looks at what he's gonna make doing that, yeah.
He doesn't see it. And that's such a trope in movies. It's like, okay, we don't see the note. So just seeing the note and it says, I'm offering you $100 million, smiley face. Like
in crayon or Sharpie, whatever it is. Just, oh my God, it killed me.
Oh, okay. All right.
So he's even trying to explain, I don't feel high off the Coke. He's like, well, that's just because you got all this crazy adrenaline rush. Yeah. Like, he's so chill about this whole situation. Like, I just want you to think about it.
Yeah, which I won't lie, I honestly believed him even up until the end. I just thought that he just wanted him involved in the company. It wasn't until the twist at the very, very end that he changes. I honestly believed him. I was like, oh yeah, he just gave him Coke, whatever. So yeah, we've almost been recording for another hour, so I guess we got to kind of wrap this up a little bit. Yeah, we're definitely
doing 2 episodes.
Yeah, right. So I feel like there was a few things that were either cut out or glossed over, where near the end, you know, there's the big like riot, and not necessarily a riot, but they're trying to hold off the scabs from coming into the building, the power callers, and they set up those like cement mannequins that are kind of established earlier in the movie. And then, you know, they blockade them from the sides with the football players, and there's this big plan. But the only part of that plan that didn't make sense to me is then later the horses tell him like, thank you for freeing us. But I don't remember when he freed them. Are they just saying like, oh, thank you for setting this plan into motion? That
No, there's actually a scene where it's very brief, but you see him go to the house, Steelif's house. He looks at the video that was taken on his phone, which is how he was able to spread it. He puts in the code, so they do show him sneaking back
You're
in,
right.
and I think
They just
that's
don't show what
alluding
he
to him
did.
setting that up.
You're right. They just don't show what he did when he went into the building. Because, yeah, you're right. I remember him doing that now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. So there was maybe just one cut scene of him, like, opening the doors or something. And then, like,
Yeah, but
it was already
think
long
the,
enough,
the-
you know.
Yeah, implication was, okay, we're at least going to show up, set it up to show him back at the house. That clearly he's working on planning something. He makes a call to someone and says, hey, we need you to get here, or whatever it is he says. And during this period as well, once the revelation is made and he actually has video evidence of it, he goes on that show, I just got the shit kicked out of me, goes through a whole bunch of shit, literal, actual, like, is covered in shit.
Oh, yeah.
And then the video gets aired. But then it creates the stocks to go up because they've created scientific breakthrough for Worry Free, and it kind of backfires. And I think it, again, kind of goes to that, we're sometimes desensitized, where even when things are shown to us, if we're separated away from it far enough, we can just say, okay, awesome, that's great, whatever.
Yeah.
But it isn't until that actual moment where, they stop those power collars from going in, all hell breaks loose, there's riots, he gets thrown in a locked armored vehicle, that the horsemen come to the rescue. The
Esquitarians.
Esquihumans?
Oh,
Esquitarians.
Yeah, I think it was Esquitarians, right? Or yeah. I can't remember.
Yep. Horse people.
Ridiculous. So I love the prosthetics though. Like I don't think they used much or any CGI. They were like real.
It
like,
looked
suits.
like, yeah, that was all costume design or prosthetics, yeah.
Which, by the way, incredible job of hiding that aspect, because this movie has been out for 5 years. I had no idea that was the twist. Zero clue.
I was so glad that because it's one of the movies where if you don't know the twist, you're gonna get such a great experience going through it and realizing. Oh, because when I first saw it, me and Amanda were like, "What happened?" It creates this really dark humor.
I almost knew because of the vibe. I think it's just because of how many movies I've seen that there was something about the vibe that I was like, something weird is gonna happen. But no, I never could have guessed half horse people. The social commentary is so poignant in this movie because even though it's like obvious and like maybe even on the nose, it's also true and like still says something real and it has something deeper to it the more you look into it. Because like the soda girl, when she throws the soda, cracks his head open, it becomes like a meme within the culture. And that's the only thing people focus on. They don't care about the actual protest. They care about the meme. And this girl who was a voice that was meant to go up against corporatization and capitalism is now in commercials for a major soda company selling that soda. So it's meant to show that anybody can be manipulated by this system like our main character is. And there are some theories that Squeeze actually works for Lyft.
I've seen that.
And that he's kind of there to create like this false sense that we have control. Like, well, yeah, we can just if we just rise up and make 15 more cents an hour, we did something. But at the end of the day, we're still just another cog in the machine. And that's really interesting. I like that idea because he does have a weird vibe to him. He doesn't feel genuine in his
Yeah,
approach.
he mentions he goes from town to town, kind of stirring up trouble. It's one of those where it's very they write him in a way where he could be entirely genuine, and this is what he does, and he really cares for it, or he could be just another person who's part of that system.
Yeah.
And again, somebody's also made the theory that did Cassius actually accept the offer? Because he did become the horse. Like, was
Mm.
all of that actually just to play that part? It's
Oh
interesting.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and the
True.
very ending, he ends up showing up at Lift's house, and it definitely sounds a lot more like he's against him. But
Yeah.
one could also make the argument, and again, I think it's not as strong of an argument as he actually came to realizing that this isn't the right way. But one could still make the argument that this is part of the plan overall.
Yeah. I think he didn't agree to it. I because
I same. I'm in the same camp as that.
Yeah, I like to lean alongside of the squeeze theory of him working, but I don't think that Lift knew, or I'm sorry, I don't think that Cassius agreed to Lift's plan. I
Yeah.
think that the red herring of the coke, which actually, I'm sorry, not red herring. It did end up being the actual catalyst that. I think that was just meant to keep you guessing of like, oh, you know,
Yep.
did he or did he not actually give it to him? Because I think at the end of the day, it was supposed to be Steve Lift's like confidence, his ego, that would just assume that Cassius will agree to this no matter what.
Yep.
So it's like,
Yep.
yeah, I'll give him this shit, he'll agree to it, and then it won't matter that I gave him it
He
anyway.
let him go free. He didn't even send people after him after
Yeah.
the fact that it wasn't until like the really big protests and riots started happening that they're like Cassius Green, and then the dude knocks him out and they throw him in the truck. But other than that, I mean, I was expecting the first time watching it that he wasn't gonna let him leave. He's like, "Oh no, you're staying here tonight." Or he would wake up the next day and Lift's at his house saying
Yeah.
like, "I need your answer." One of those like, "You're not going to talk to people about this." He didn't give a shit.
No, yeah, we'll wrap this up, but it is funny that me and my coworker, we were just having a conversation at work the other day that like no matter how good you are at your job, they will just raise the bar of expectation. So, like let's say you're as something as simple as like a freight worker and you're unpackaging pallets of whatever for a store, and it's like the average is 2 pallets a day. Oh, we get 2 pallets a day done. And then a new worker comes in and he gets 3 pallets a day done. Well, you know what they want done next month? 4 pallets. It doesn't matter that that guy came in and totally did something incredible and like 1.5 times the work. Because he did that, now corporate goes, well, if they did that, we can do even better. We want 4 pallets done. And that is so true. And this job, or I'm sorry, this movie sells that idea very well of like, no matter how good you are at your job, because at some point, Cassius, when he's doing that montage of like, yeah, fuck is that? The Johnny, one of his managers, the real like skeezy one, he comes up and he's like, yeah, you're doing a great job, man. We're gonna need you to double the hits that you're making though. So anyway, and it was like, if he's doing such a great fucking job, better than anyone else, why does he have to double the amount of calls he's making? He's already making so many more than anyone else's.
Yeah.
But anyway, you got any final thoughts before we give our rating?
I just love this movie. I'm glad that because I had watched it, I think at least over a year, maybe 2 ago, and I still enjoy it, if not more. Yeah, no, just a really big fan of the movie. How about you?
Oh no, I loved it. It's really really good. 8 out of 10. It's a great movie. I think that I would really enjoy revisiting it.
Man, I was really divided on this. I think I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10 for me. I can't think of anything that I think the movie did wrong. I think the movie knew what it was from the beginning. there was little things it planted. Like I said, when he kind of very early on, I think it's in the interview, he goes, we're not rewriting the human genome here. We're doing telemark. There's so many little moments like that. The jokes about, oh, my parents wanted me to have an American name, the 40 cents on to like the 40,
working you like
so
a horse until
things.
you die,
Yeah, where I watched this a second time, and it's something I'm like, I could watch this movie again. And I'm very rarely rewatch a movie kind of person.
Yeah, great movie. All right, so are you ready for your suggestion for next week?
Oh, I'm ready, and I hope David Cross is in it.
It's not a suggestion, by the way. You're watching it. I'm not suggesting you watch it. You are watching it. No, David Cross might be in it. You know what? Now that I think about it, I don't know. I haven't seen it in so long that it's possible.
I wonder how many movies we can go in a row with David Cross in the movie.
That would be amazing if he's actually in this. I'm not even going to look it up because...
I am making a birdhouse.
I'm making a birdhouse. So ironically, we're watching 23, the Jim Carrey movie. So, I think the movie might be called The Number 23. Yeah, The Number 23.
It's a very Carrey Christmas. That's what we're calling these movie choices of yours. A very Carrey Christmas.
Oh, I thought it was Jim Sember.
It is, but
I like a Merry Carey. Have a Carey Christmas. A Carey Christmas.
A Carey Christmas.
Yeah, there we go. I'm glad we figured that out the third week into it. Yeah, number 23. It's from 2007.
Okay.
I'm excited to watch this one because I don't remember if it's good or bad.
I love that you keep pulling, because I love Jim Carrey and I love Jim Carrey movies. And you keep picking Jim Carrey movies that I have not seen or heard of.
I can't believe that, man. Like this, because the only reason is this movie was such a big thing for its time because everyone went like, oh, whoa, Jim Carrey is in a movie that isn't funny. Like that was like the big thing for the year when it came out. But also the stock market crashed in this year, so there was other stuff going on.
Gotcha. I was very involved in the stock market. I crashed it.
Yeah, as a 12-year-old, we were very...
I was drunk.
Invested.
Drunk 12-year-old who crashed the stock market.
All right, but anyway, thank you guys for watching this episode and listening. Neon Valley, episode 25. Please make sure to join that Patreon and our Reddit.
Do it.
Discord, all that good stuff. We didn't tell you to do it at the beginning, but I'm telling you to do it now.
MVP, baby.
Watch the number 23 before next week if you want to be a part of this conversation. Leave some comments. And, oh, by the way, we haven't gotten many viewer questions in the last few episodes. We haven't been asking for any, but we also haven't gotten any, which is suspicious.
We're going to put that blame on you.
So, exactly. Join the Discord, the Reddit, ask us some questions. We will answer them. And look at it this way. We'll say your name live on a like a show or whatever. So, like, your name will be said.
Famous.
It can feed your ego. We can say whatever you want. Just don't say that. I know what you want to say.
That.
Not that. But anything else.
Later. Ask that on the Patreon.
Private DM me if you want to say that. All right. Anyway, thank you guys. Have a good one. This was a long one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.